When I made my Exploring the Concept video on Danger Days, lots of people asked me why I didn't cover Welcome to the Black Parade instead. The reasons are simple, and stated in that video's introduction, see the cards. Danger Days is a better front-to-back, track-by-track album, and has a more cohesive conceptual story as told in the lyrics, which is what this series is all about. But, as this series goes on, and as the views and comments on that Danger Days video continue to add up, thank you by the way, check out the Patreon below, I can't ignore the calls to cover this one for any longer. Now, I will say that this record has an awesome aesthetic in its sound, and the tracks on this one that are good are incredibly good. My 3 favourite MCR tracks are on this album, I'll point them out as we go, but there are also so many tracks on here that are thoroughly unremarkable and easily skippable. But you never know, digging into the concept and story might prove me wrong. I'm Rustin Charmaine, and this is Exploring the Concept. For a long time I avoided this record. Seriously, whoever decided on which tracks to release as singles needs a lobotomy. We'll discuss that further as we go through track by track, but I will say my appreciation for this record shot up when I first listened to it front to back. This album has an almost carnival atmosphere at times, as our protagonist, the patient, follows the parade of death, welcoming him into hell as he reflects on his life and generally takes in the macabre wonders on show. The story is non-linear, so unlike my videos on Danger Days or Monsters, I won't be able to run through with a then this happened, then this happened, as this record is more of an anthology in its storytelling concept, discussing memory and hypothetical as much as the journey itself. Rather than finding storylines, we are better to take each track as an isolated tale set within one world, and about one character. The opinions I'm about to express are my own, and are not influenced by anything the artists themselves have stated or intended. I write that part anew every time, I could just copy and paste it. Whatever, onto the video.
Now come on to this tragic affair. Wipe off that makeup, what's in is despair. So throw on the black dress, mix in with the lot. You might wake up and notice you're someone you're not.
We open with a weekly beeping heart rate monitor. Remember that for the start of the next track. The lyrics invite us merrily to a macabre event, the end. The protagonist of the album, known as the patient, invites others to attend his final moments, somewhat bitterly wishing that they learn a little something about themselves in the process.
Another contusion, my funeral jag. Here's my resignation, I'll serve it in drag. You've got front row seats to the penitence bar. When I grow up, I want to be.
So not only has the patient arranged for his nearest and not so dearest to be at his bedside as he meets his end, he has taken his death into his own hands, intentionally landing himself in hospital one final time, resigning from life full of bitterness for those who selfishly wanted him to live. And there he goes. We hear the patient flatlining as the aptly named Dead begins, roaring into a triumphant guitar solo that feels at odds with the subject matter and yet somehow perfect.
And if your heart stops beating, I'll be here wondering, did you get what you deserve? The ending of your life.
Yeesh, that's cold. You'll hear me saying that a lot during the runtime of this record, by the way. It has a fair few zingers. Also, I'm afraid that I've just accidentally seen a note on Genius saying that there are 3 separate protagonists in this track. I don't know if that's fan opinion or if it's supported by supplementary media from the album or even band interviews. I've never heard it that way though, and I don't want to dilute my thoughts and opinions with, well, facts. So I'm going to use a different annotation-less site for the lyrics and continue on with my own interpretation. Just to quickly double down, what I'm discussing is how I interpret these songs, not what the official story is. In the opening verse, the patient imagines waiting patiently for one of his closest friends or family members at the pearly gates, wishing upon them a gruesome and early death, similar to his own, that he feels they are deserving of. Then, here in the chorus, he imagines that he is the only person there to greet them, that nobody else cared beyond he who is only there to mock. This is actually really sinister and horrible, but I like it. So, according to that note I accidentally read, this is the patient remembering his conversation with a doctor where he was told that he only had a fortnight remaining. Again, I never took it that way. The exaggerated comedic tone that this vocal is performed in always struck me as a continuation of the cruel mocking and doom wishing from the patient towards whichever unfortunate soul has irked himself. The jovial tone and sing-song nature of this track is exposed for me at the end. This person who the patient wishes dead found his demise funny, so he points fun at the one he imagines for them. Welcome to one of the best tracks on the record. There are 3 that I'll be signalling out as incredible, and this is the first such one. Spoilers, the next 2 come back to back, and none of them were released as singles. Hey, you know, maybe committing suicide to spite a few of my twatty family members wasn't such a good idea after all. I mean, don't get me wrong, it was hilarious. You should have seen their stupid faces. But I didn't think about you and how it might affect you, and how maybe the knowledge of it might kill you inside. He knows that, like Freddy Krueger, his memory will haunt her dreams, killing any infatuations that she may foster with anyone other than himself. In contrast to the previous track's addressees, he wishes the best for this person, and feels that she shall be rewarded in life and beyond for the good person that she is. He knows that he has seen the last of her, as her destination is not his own. He tries to speak to her, to convince her to get over him and move on, to stop the drowning of her dream crushes. He is gone, he abandoned her, and she deserves far better. As he sinks towards hell, in his final moments he speaks again, content in the knowledge that she will never join him there.
When you're out on your own, if I crash on the couch, can I sleep in my clothes? 'Cause I spent the night dancing, I'm drunk, I suppose if it looks like I'm laughing, I'm really just asking to leave. This alone, you're in time for the show. You're the one that I need, I'm the one that you loathe. You can watch me corrode like a beast in repose, cause I love all the poison away with the boys in the band. Whoever I've been, on a band around that shows. So why don't you blow me? Work your spin by street.
Ladies and gentlemen, Gerard Way. The lyricism in MCR overall is honestly incredible, and this opening verse, this track in general, is a perfect example of it. The patient reflects on his life following his outpouring of sorrow for his former love. He remembers the times when he would lean too hard on his vices, crawling home to her stinking drunk time and time again. At this point in his life, he is already flirting with the idea of suicide, drowning himself in alcohol and discussing it with imagery that implies a violent end. A shot to take the pain away, a shot to remember, a shot to forget. I hear this line with two meanings. The surface level meaning, a strong drink, and an implied meaning, embedded within the themes of the record, a shot from a gun. The pre-chorus plays into this, blowing a kiss before she goes, meaning putting a gun in one's mouth before firing it. The patient, even at this point, is painfully aware of the path that he is on, and the spiral he is caught in without hope of salvation. The first 4 tracks on this record are incredible, one of the strongest openings to any album I have ever heard. The energy, the atmosphere, the lyrical content, everything. At this point I'm in love, but the honeymoon period is about to end, and those of you who know which track comes next are probably furious with me for saying that.
When I was a young boy, my father took me into the city to see a marching band. He said, son, when you grow up, would you be the savior of the broken, the beaten and the damned? He said, will you defeat them, your demons and all the non-believers, the plans that they have made? Because one day I'll leave you a phantom to lead you in the summer to join the Black Parade.
The patient revisits a memory from his childhood, one tinged with the happiness of nostalgia and the weight of emotional significance. His father, who died when the patient was still young, backs his son to grow up and be a better person than he himself was. A mantle that, thanks to the preceding 4 tracks, we know the patient failed to live up to. Regardless, as he himself dies, the patient pictures rejoining his father at the parade. The patient recalls how stubbornly he tried in his youth, how hard he pushed himself to live up to his father's expectations of him, and his expectations of himself. His dreams didn't all magically come true, but he embraced that disappointment and bitterness, weaponizing it into something workable. He does this in tribute to his fallen father and to his tired mother. This is a portrait of the patient before he became the broken man who met his end by his own hand. Maybe this song isn't that dark and it's just me. I'm a dark guy, okay?
We wanna break this, but I won't explain.
The way this section steadily rises, growing more and more hysterical, lends meaning to the passage as a whole. This is the young patient's last scrap of defiance he has left before he embraces his desolate destiny. These are the ramblings of someone who knows that they cannot defeat the demons within them, that it's only a matter of time. Ending on "I don't care" is perfect. It's something that we've all shouted, internally or externally, when something doesn't go our way that we actually very much do care about, but want to seem apathetic. This song isn't as dull as Memory had it, I'm happy to say. I think it just got so overplayed for so many years that I grew tired of hearing it. After a break of a few years, I'd be happy to hear this one again actually. This next track though, I'm fairly certain I'll still think that this is boring as fuck. I've had some breakups. In fact, fun fact about me, I've never dumped anyone, only ever been the one getting dumped. Lots of them hurt like shit. One of them I even needed therapy to help move past, and I'm still not sure that I have. But even with all that relatable weight for me, this song of trying to seem like the one with the power when you're the one being left does very little for me. This masking of emotion with anger and bitterness shit doesn't hit for me at all. When I want that, I'll listen to Lindsay's cuts on Rumours.
When you go, would you have the guts to say, I don't love you like I loved you yesterday?
I just want to pick out this line and the delivery of the word guts. The emotion in that one syllable is palpable and tremendously delivered, and as someone who has had that emotion explicitly expressed to them, this one moment hits. But it's not enough to rescue a dull song that never should have been released as a single. Oh yeah, the concept. The patient is bitterly reflecting on a breakup. Don't worry, the album gets interesting again in the next track. This next one is a banger.
Because I got enough to spare, and I'll be granting your permission, cause you haven't got a prayer. And I said, hey, hallelujah, I wanna come on, sing the praise, and let the spirit come on through you. We got innocence for days. Well, I think I'm on burning hell.
It seems like every album I cover has a song attacking Christianity, perhaps because the musicians I gravitate towards share my views on the pious among us. Anyway, the patient reflects on the followers who attempted to drag him into their idea of heaven, mocking them whilst embracing the fact that he is on his way to heaven.
You play ring around the ambulance like you never gave a care. So get the choir boys around you, it's a compliment, I swear. And I said, ashes to ashes, we all fall down. I wanna hear you sing the praise. I said, ashes to ashes, we all fall down. We got innocence for days.
It's not a compliment. Nothing here is complimentary. The patient is a sarcastic, nihilistic shit. I really like him. Here, the patient laughs at the religious people he knows, mocking them for spending their life awaiting their death. Their beliefs are a plague, referenced in the nursery rhyme, lulling them into thinking that a good life is one spent completely innocent of all sin, awaiting an eternal heaven that will never come to pass. The patient reflects on the dichotomy of claiming that every sin is forgivable, every person is salvageable, and yet this community has an affinity for ostracizing any who go against their ideals and teachings, often flip-flopping on what it means to be a good person, whimsically deciding whether or not to put effort into being a forgiving soul. The patient is a sinner, and proudly declares himself as such. This track is a stormer. The album comes back with a bang after a weaker spell. The best is yet to come, but first, we have to get a little bit sad.
Turn away. If you could get me a drink of water, 'cause my lips are chapped and faded, call my Aunt Marie. Help her gather all my things and bury me in all my favorite colors, my sisters and my brothers still. I will not kiss you, 'cause the hardest part of this is leaving you.
This is where the story gets a little confused for me. There are major hints in earlier songs that the patient took his own life, intentionally let himself in the hospital so that he could die. I did think that perhaps he ended his life prematurely by refusing treatment, but that is dispelled in the next verse. Maybe the contusions mentioned in the end are simply marks from treatments? It's possible. I've had infusion therapy many times and it tends to leave me bruised and wounded. Thankfully mine are only for Crohn's disease, not anything potentially lethal like cancer, and they're also not radioactive. If they were, I can only imagine that the wounds will be far worse. So maybe that's it. Or maybe, just to get a little darker and more deranged, on brand you might say, perhaps as he descends to hell, the patient reimagines his own death to make it more palatable. If we remember this is how I disappear and his guilt over removing himself from his love's life without warning, perhaps this is him dreaming that his death really was out of his control after all, and that he had a fond farewell with his family and friends rather than the bitterness of reality. Did I just take the story of an album called Welcome to the Black Parade and make it more depressing? Is there something wrong with me?
Now turn away, 'cause I'm awful just to see, 'cause all my hair's abandoned, all my body, all my agony. Know that I will never marry, baby, I'm just soggy from the chemo, but counting down the days to go. It just ain't living, and I just hope you know that if you say goodbye today, I'd ask you to be true, 'cause the hardest part of this is leaving you.
Soggy from the chemo. Soggy from the chemo. Fuck. If that doesn't paint a vivid image in your mind, I don't know what will. This song is brutal in its beauty and horror. Another crucial thing here though is the subtle acknowledgement of his suicide. Hanging on just ain't living. I would agree. This line convinces me that I'm right. I just want to say again that these videos are me interpreting the concepts of these albums without reading what the officially stated stories are. I'm aware that this is a well-trodden path of an album, but I always prefer my own headcanon to the actual tale. Scott chose Knives.
From the chemo, but counting down the days to go. It just ain't living, and I just hope you know.
The best ever My Chem song. You will not convince me otherwise.
Mama, we all go to hell. Mama, we all go to hell. I'm writing this letter and wishing you well. Mama, we all go to hell. Oh, well, now, Mama, we're all gonna die. Mama, we're all gonna die. Stop asking me questions. I'd hate to see you cry. Mama, we're all gonna die.
Continuing on the path of delusion as he descends further and further into hell, the patient imagines himself as a soldier, preparing to die for whatever the fuck cause it is that he's fighting for, and writing to his mother not entirely lovingly.
Mama, we're all full of lies. Mama, we're meant for the flies. And right now they're building a coffin your size. Mama, we're all full of lies. Well, Mother was the one into my legs and to my tongue. You should have raised a baby girl. I should have been a better son. If you could count on the infection, naked, amputated ones, you should have been. I could have been a better son.
The bitterness expressed here is tangible, reminiscent of the first few tracks, but it's rambling and all over the place. The malice is present in the verbiage, but the repetition, not just of entire lines but of the name Mama, hint at the deteriorating mental state of the patient. Not only is he using a childish form of address, but he feels the need to state who he is addressing on almost every line. The last of his sanity is framed, and like many would, he calls to his mother. But it's not a cry for help, rather a final fuck you. And the feeling is mutual.
She said you ain't no son of mine for what you done there. Can't find a place for you and just your mind, your manners when you come. When you go to return to me, my love. That's right.
Ouch. I don't know if his mother ever said words to this effect, but this is his imaginary representation of her and what he feels she would say. He is deserving of hell, and don't be rude to the devil once you're down there. This track is all about the deteriorating mental state of the patient, explained in the lyrics but best felt through the music. The only track that might be able to rival this one in terms of quality is the one that follows it. I love this track. I have a clear vision of what this one's about, but I don't know if it fits within the patient's story. As I go through the lyrics, let's see how it falls. This opening is a reflection on a traumatic life.
Some say now suffer all the children and walk away a savior or a madman and polluted from gutter institutions. Don't you breathe on me, undeserving of your sympathy, 'cause there ain't no way that I'm sorry for what I did. Went through it all. How could you cry for me? 'Cause I don't feel bad about it. So shut your eyes, kiss me goodbye, and say.
At this point, you could be forgiven for thinking that this is another track directed at his former lover, begging her to let go and stop feeling bad for him. I don't see it that way though. The speaker in this verse and the next is an aggrandized persona that the patient has crafted in order to put a stern face on all of the awful things that he has seen and done. The person he is lulling to sleep is his own delicate conscience. knowing that his soft soul won't survive hell.
Dreams, a drink for the horror that I'm in, for the good guys and the bad guys, for the monsters that I've been. 3 cheers for tyranny, unapologetic apathy, 'cause there ain't no way that I'm coming back again.
The braggadocious persona brushes off the trauma with a panache designed to distract from the obvious pain that the patient is in. Like a bad person who cannot stop themselves from being so, acknowledging their flaws and attempting to embrace them to protect their sense of self-worth. He slips though.
The hardest parts, the awful things that I've seen.
His tender conscience begins to feel and experience hell, immediately losing his mind. His stronger persona attempts to lull him to sleep, more and more forcefully and desperately, knowing that if he cannot lock down his tenderness, he will be lost to the flames. But the conscience doesn't want to hand himself over entirely to the dead-eyed, steely, lifeless embodiment of his pain. He screams to keep himself awake, knowing that he is only truly lost if he loses his emotion and feeling. In terms of lyrical content, this is the best track on the record, and doesn't get anywhere near enough love for my money. The next track, though, gets too much love, so let's swap them round, yeah?
Citizen out of you, because they sleep with a gun and keep an eye on you, son, so they can watch all the things you do. Because the drugs never work, they gonna give you a smirk, 'cause they got methods of keeping you clean. They gonna rip up your heads, your aspirations to shreds, another cog in the murder machine.
I have no idea how this fits in with the narrative of the record. From the title and the verbiage, it appears to be an anthem for the downtrodden, complaining about adults stripping us of our individuality and crafting us into copies of their boring selves, even threatening violence against them should they continue to oppress us. This song is a fun bop when you're drunk in a bar or club, but as you can probably tell by the fact that this is a video essay, I'm currently sober and on my couch. In this environment, this song isn't all that interesting, sorry. It's fun, but that's about all I have to say about it.
They set out to just scare the living shit out of me. They could care less. When I was there on the day they sold the cars for the Queen, and when the lights all went out, we watched our lives on the screen. I hate the ending myself, but it started with an alright scene. It was the roar of the crowd that gave me heartache to sing. It was a lie when they smiled and said you won't feel a thing. And as we ran from the cops, we laughed so hard it would sting.
In what I'm sure was originally designed to be the album closer, The Patient reflects on the good-ish times in his life and the ultimate futility of it all. This feels like a final moment of clarity before accepting the embrace of eternal death. He's not too happy about it.
How will it matter after I'm gone? Because you never learned a goddamn thing. It's just the same song with nothing to say about a lifelong wait for a
This double negative is very intentional. This is the conscience of the patient attempting to convince him that he did actually value his life, and that it was wrong to allow it to slip away. Did he spend his life just waiting to die? If the patient rankles at that, then clearly he was lying to himself about being apathetic to it all. This album's an odd one for me in that it starts really strong, has a lull, has another tremendous spell, and then ends pretty tamely. Thankfully there is a bit more energy to close us out.
No, I know that I can't make you stay, but where's your heart? But where's your heart? But where's your... And I know there's nothing I can say to change that part, to change that part, to change.
In what I suspect, but haven't looked up to confirm, was a label-nagged edition, we end on a slightly positive note. I said that MCR don't do happy endings in my Danger Days video, and I'm not entirely sure that this is one. But this would appear to be the patient being offered a second chance to live. Or maybe he has arrived in hell and is being teased with the prospect of one. He is taunted with visions of his lost love, being told that if she can forgive him, he can return to the land of the living. After his journeys through the outer rings of hell, he is ready to accept any judgment he has coming if it means he can return.
I see you lying next to me, with words I thought I'd never speak, awake and unafraid, asleep or dead.
This is Mal's spinning top. Is he really there? Is he dreaming? Is he dead? It's up to you, the listener. I prefer the darker elements of the story, so I'm going to choose to see this as his hellish torture. Being teased with what he could have had, the words he could have said. No, I am not a romantic at heart. This record is spotty in its quality, and I'm sure that's a comment that will earn me a fair amount of dislikes, but when it hits hard. The story that ties the concept album together is excellent, dark, depressing, hopeful and uncompromising. This record is well known as one of the best concept albums of this century, and with good reason. Normally at this point, I'd tell you to give this record a go, but let's face it, you already have. If you enjoyed this video, there are plenty more like it on my channel. You can follow me on Patreon for updates and chuck me a few quid should you feel the urge. This has been Exploring the Concept. I've been Royston Charmaine, and until next time, I still prefer Danger Days. Peace.